Once upon a time in Wisconsin's capital, a new governor came into office with energy and fresh ideas, only to find out that he had to deal with leaders of the Assembly and Senate who were not members of his party. But no, I'm not talking about Tony Evers taking office in January and having to deal with Republicans Robin Vos and Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald. I'm talking about January of 1987, when new Governor Tommy G. Thompson came in and had to deal with Assembly Speaker Tom Loftus and Senate Majority Leader Joe Stroh and Senate President Fred Risser, all Democrats. So it's time for a wonderful, informative civil dialogue on the new scenario. Fast forward to 2019. Governor Evers just completed his first 100 days. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. Tom and I love to get together, and we don't get together very much. And so on these kind of programs, we get a chance to catch up.
And you have a history that goes back to when you joined the Assembly. When he came in '67.
I learned from his book that we were both in the Army together in Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, in 1966, something like that.
Gave you guys guns? Issued weapons?
Oh, yes, we did. I was an expert marksman, I'll tell you.
Okay.
I was a marksman with a .45 pistol. I was a military policeman.
Oh, you were military policeman? Yeah, I had the rifle.
I was arresting people. You were throwing them in jail, weren't you?
Yeah,
that's right.
All right. But
we didn't know each other then. But
I understand. But you came to the Assembly in '67. You came when?
77.
It's not a quiz. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
Civil dialogue, kind of an overview of where how well you think Governor Evers has done in the first 100 days. What has he done well? What could he have done better? Governor, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the grade is incomplete at this point in time, and that's not being derogatory. I just think, Governor Evers has a lot to learn. He went from not being in the legislature like I was and knew Tom Loftus and had lots of skirmishes, lots of friendships developed. A lot different than Governor Tony, because he comes in from DPI. He was an elected official constitutionally, but he has a lot to learn. And I think putting together the budget and so on and so forth, I think it's incomplete. I don't think he has. I think the good thing he's doing is that it's a new face, a new attitude, a new change. That's always positive. But I think his failure has been, I don't think he's been able to come together with the Republicans. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. It's got to be a two-way street, and I don't think that they have meshed very well. There seems to be a lot of friction. That's from me as an outsider, not being in the Capitol at all. But it seems to me both sides need to come together, because whether you're Republican or Democrat, once the election's over, you got to govern, and you got to get the state moving forward. I think it's slow getting started, and I think that's probably because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of experience of the governor. I think he's got to reach out to the Republicans, and the Republicans got to reach out to the governor. And I'm not sure. Maybe they have, but I don't think they're getting together as often as they should and get along as well as they should.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, first 100 days?
Well, I would agree with the governor. I mean, the difference is that when Tommy was elected governor, we had served together for a number of years. I was the speaker, he was the minority leader. And on process, it was certainly bipartisan and civil. And we were comfortable by this time in our disagreements. Mm-hmm. We had probably debated, I don't know, 50,000 bills and amendments by the time he became governor.
It was only 49,000.
49,000, yeah. And he lost most of them. But anyway.
He wouldn't let me do anything.
Minority leader, he just called. Yeah.
But it was
I won.
That's right. It was a great time in the legislature. And Tommy, the first act he did was appoint Tim Cullen as the Secretary of Health and Social Services. Tim was the majority leader in the Senate. And instead of the Democrats thinking, oh, this is wrong, he's taking away a leader, we really embraced that, because here was Tim Cullen in charge of the agency that most Democrats felt most strongly about. Here was someone they could call. Clauser was familiar as an old shoe by this time.
Jim Clauser,
the governor's
Department of Administration.
So we didn't have to have any getting to know you, and it would have been alien to us to not talk to the governor, or the governor not talk.
Because you had a working relationship.
I mean,
Mr. Evers coming from DPI does not. Yeah. So it a disadvantage to Governor Evers that he'd never served in the ledge.
I think so, but a lot of governors have never served in the legislature. At least Sherman Davis didn't.
That's true. And neither did Jim Doyle, although he was AG. Governor Walker told me in January 2011, I asked him what advice you gave Governor Walker, and you said, be bold. And Governor Walker did go on to be bold.
Right.
Do you think Governor Evers' first budget was a bold budget?
Sure. Yeah.
It spends an awful lot of money. He touches a lot of bases. Is it too comprehensive? Too many major changes?
I don't think it's the changes. I think it's the tone. I think what he's done, and I think Tom is absolutely correct. We had a friendship. We knew the arguments the other side had, each of us, because we've done it so often. But he's coming in and sort of, I think, pointing his finger in the chest of the Republicans, saying, "I'm the new sheriff in town, and we're going to do it my way." And I don't think that's a winning tactic. And I think the budget is very liberal, but the Democrats have been out of office for 8 years, and I'm not shocked about it. But I think when you have two conservative Republicans leading the two houses, it's sort of a in-your-face kind of budget. And I'm not sure that was, maybe it was too aggressive as far as getting things done right away.
Well, before I give the speaker a chance, I want to, in your book, you point out that in your first budget, you sent a message, there's a new sheriff, a new governor, and
right.
How do you like my 290 vetoes of your budget bill passed by?
But that was after the budget. That's after I couldn't get my budget through.
Okay.
Well, and that's when, we had a really some serious negotiations after that.
Did you consider Tubin vetoing the whole budget, Governor?
Sure.
You did?
Absolutely.
Well, Tom, Mr. Evers' budget, very aggressive in lots of ways. He pays a lot of debts to groups that help get him elected. Too bold, too big, too major, or pretty much where he needs to be?
No, I think pretty much where he needs to be. You get one shot. I mean, you're the governor. It's your budget. You get to put in anything you want. The legislature has to take it up. And then you have the ability, like Governor Thompson did at the time, 290 vetoes. Now, we had negotiated a great deal of that budget before it got to the governor's desk. And the 290 vetoes were, let's say, outside of the things we could negotiate. Right. So we had a great deal of controversial issues that we needed to pass, and we did. Governor needed to veto him, and he did. Did that sour our relationship? No, not at all. We had been through it with him before. But, leading up to that, we had negotiated a new unemployment compensation system where the fund was near bankruptcy. We put it back together. The governor took on business. I took on labor. The university was falling apart as a system, I would say, at the time. And we negotiated a proposal of faculty catch-up raises, readjustment of enrollment around the state, peer payment systems. And all of that had been a precursor to when he became governor. So, and he's a nice guy. I mean, it was easy to deal with him. I've never seen this angry side. You know,
you ran against him.
He's so full of it. You know that, Steve.
You ran against him in 1990, but no. Well, let's bring it back.
Thank God I lost too.
He made all,
Things went uphill after that.
Governor Evers picked 3 issues: healthcare, expansion of Medicaid, and K-12 school funding, and let's fix our highways, an issue you know a great deal about because you were the sponsor of a Highway 2020 program. Here's my question, Tom. Governor Evers clearly feels that a centerpiece of any budget he signs has to be the Medicaid expansion. Do you share his passion for that issue?
Oh, I do. I think not taking the federal money when it was offered at the time was certainly a mistake. I mean, you have states from Arizona to wherever that
37
took that,
states have found some way to
taken that
expand
money.
it. If the Republicans put a budget on his desk that doesn't include Medicaid expansion, would you counsel him to veto the whole budget?
I don't know. I'd have to see it at the end. I have the understanding that the budget is balanced partly by using that money. I don't understand the governor and the 2 legislative leaders not talking to each other.
Okay.
You know, I served with, I don't know, 5 governors. Every one of them was a friend of mine and continue to be friends. And to not talk is going to be harmful to the relationship as they go through. This budget has to pass at some time this summer. They have to have a relationship. Okay, so we had a built-in relationship, but when Dreyfus came along, he reached out. Really, he did.
So you fault them both. They could come closer together and meet more often. But put on your hat as former Secretary of Health and Human Services.
that's not fair.
Why?
That's not fair.
You didn't even hear my question.
I know, but I know what's coming.
Should we expand Medicaid?
I think that that's got to be left up to the legislature.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to get involved in that. You know, my predilection is always to take as much federal dollars as possible. Okay. I've always, it's always been, because if it doesn't go to Wisconsin, it goes someplace else. But
thank you.
But
I can move on. I have a new subject if you're done.
Okay, but the issue, is I don't want to get involved in that.
I understand
that issue.
So next question. Did both sides, Governor Evers and Mr. Voss and Mr. Fitzgerald, get off on the wrong foot with a lame duck session?
Yes.
And how serious is that?
Well, had I been the leaders, and the governor was gone, I'd have went back to my own priorities at that point. I think the lame duck session is going to color the relationship from now on. I would have been so careful. I do not want any legislative powers to be going before the Supreme Court and having them decide what powers of the legislature are, because as Governor Thompson knows, I tried that, and I ended up, they expanded the governor's powers on the item veto. So we'll see how that comes about.
The May 15th oral arguments before the Supreme Court is very, very important, because I don't have to tell you, gentlemen, extraordinary sessions have been used since 1981 to pass budgets and redistricting and ratify labor contracts. And that's a very interesting precedent coming before the court. Your thoughts on the lame duck, sir?
I think for any time, I think the legislature's got to have the power to be able to call themselves in session. They're not going to be a co-equal branch to the governors if they can't call themselves back into session. We're both legislators, and extraordinary sessions have always been customary, routine, needed.
Yeah.
And so anytime you take away that power, any kind of infringement on that power, I think is a mistake. Well, I agree with Tom that going to the Supreme Court is the thing. You know, I'm not going to criticize them, you know, but there has to be a reach out on both sides. Republicans have got to reach out to the governor, and the governor's got to reach out, and they're just neither side seems to be wanting to reach out right now, and I think that's a failure.
And the extraordinary sessions, you see we use them.
Yes.
These votes in committee to call them were all unanimous. We were on these committees, either chairing them or the ranking member. An extraordinary session is not comparable to a special session that the governor can call in the Constitution.
Yes.
It's called an extraordinary session because we made it up. And all it is in addition to a regularly scheduled floor period.
Our elected
Didn't we have the extraordinary session for our unemployment compensation? I think we did.
We did vetoes as well. We did the state employee contracts. We did the crime.
Yeah.
We did a crime session where the Crime Victims Bill of Rights was passed.
Yeah.
So extraordinary sessions are needed to do the public's business in the Capitol.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's no
Absolutely, and it's the legislature governs itself, its procedures, its rules, and its calendar.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
Okay.
That's why it's a co-equal branch. And if the governor can call a special session, and the legislature can't call an extraordinary session, that's an unequal distribution of power. Mm-hmm. And the legislature needs to be able to counter. If the governor calls a special election, if there are different political parties, especially, and calls a special session on every particular item, and the legislature has no counter to that and be able to put up their program, that's going to be a distribution of power to one side and not to the other side, and that's not good for the democracy.
I mean, just think of the governor being able to time a veto in a way the legislature cannot respond to it.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons extraordinary sessions came about.
Within months after you taking office, you had received a promise from American Motors that they would continue to manufacture in Kenosha.
That is correct.
They broke that promise.
Very much so.
Foxconn has made a promise that it's going to build a very substantive manufacturing plant in Racine County. Now there's lots of talk, and it changes hourly. Do you see any parallels between what AMC did to your administration and what Foxconn potentially could not build in Wisconsin, Governor?
Sure, there's a lot of parallels, but there's a lot of differences. The difference is that I made the deal with Iacocca. I was the governor when Iacocca and Governor Evers did not make the deal with Foxconn.
Very true.
American Motors had a plant in Wisconsin. Foxconn did not have a plant. Big difference. Mm-hmm. And Kenosha was the centerpiece of Kenosha. That's where the employees, the city sort of rose and dropped with how successful American Motors was in that city. They haven't been in the Racine area long enough to make that kind of a thing. But those are the dissimilar things. The similar thing is promises were made and not now being changed. That is the same type of thing. It hasn't been broken like Iacocca was, so that's a difference.
Yeah. Well, Tom, if the Foxconn doesn't come anywhere near investing $10 billion and hiring 13,000 in Wisconsin, do you think Governor Evers will be blamed for that?
No.
If the investment is not anywhere near
no.
what the original deal called for?
No. I mean, he's got to act like the chief executive now and take the best deal that can be made. Yeah. He's not going to turn it over. It seems the contract, they don't get paid if they don't meet benchmarks.
There are benchmarks.
As Tommy said, when he also appointed a special committee, I think it was, I don't know, was it Jim Carley or Dave Carley, or we were trying to save American Motors after Renault came in, or something like that.
I think Tony Earl set that up.
Mm-hmm. Tony Earl set that up.
Right. Not me. I came in after that.
Yeah. So Foxconn.
And I think Pat Lucy was involved.
Yeah, Pat Lucy was involved too.
Yeah.
It turned out there was not much there to save.
Right.
So Foxconn, I think the governor has to act like the chief executive and do the best he can for the state on the deal.
I don't think he's going to get blamed because he did not make the deal.
Right.
He did not make the deal. He comes in after the deal, and he was critical of the deal while he was a candidate. And so he comes in now, and here's the deal, and they're starting to change. So I don't think he's going to get blamed for something he didn't create and now is being changed. I don't think Tony's changing it, or Governor Evers is changing it. I think Foxconn is changing it. So I don't know how you can blame him for that point of view.
Well, let me ask about it.
If he says something and Foxconn says because of that, just like Kimberly Clark did, and said that Governor Earl doesn't understand business and we've got to leave Wisconsin.
Yeah. And they moved their headquarters to Texas, right?
Moved their headquarters to Texas. I think that was. I don't think it was. I don't think what Tony said gave them that, but they can point to it. Okay. And I haven't seen where Governor Evers says we don't want you in town and you should move. So I think there's a big difference.
Is there a parallel on a different subject? Do you see? You ended up running against this gentleman in 1990 after he was seeking a second term.
That wasn't very nice of him.
And you finished second. But here's my question:
yes,
do you see a parallel in potentially Speaker Voss laying the groundwork to challenge Mr. Evers in 2022?
Well, he seems to be he is the leader of the Republican Party in Wisconsin and even the National Republican Party. So it's a natural thing. I think when I ran against the governor, I had an attitude of up or out. Mm-hmm. When we ran against each other, what we thought the campaign was going to be like was nothing. Right. Like the issues it turned out to be Indian fishing rights. Where did the lottery money go? God, what was the
so you guys
gambling, horse racing, all kinds of things like this.
The dogs and parimutuel.
Dogs and parimutuel, and we hardly ever got to talk about education, for example, or anything.
Right. That's fascinating. How is governing in 2019 different than governing in 1987? And the one thing I want to ask about the role of social media, good or bad thing in Wisconsin politics?
Well, I think money is the bad thing. Social media is here or there. When we ran against each other, newspapers counted a great deal, and local television and radio counted a great deal. So when we campaigned, we focused on God, if I had to go to one more editorial board of the Oshkosh Northwestern, I was going to jump right in Lake Winnebago. But that's what we did.
But I remember going into your office of your communications aides, and you had pins on the wall. How many times you'd been to different media markets. Right. So things are different now?
Absolutely. There's
no comparison?
Number one, it's become much more partisan. I mean, to the extent that it's really sort of really animosity. Basic, Tom and I disagreed on a lot of subjects.
You would fight on the assembly floor.
But we'd go out and have a beer afterwards.
You could have that's not done.
Tony Earl, great guy, but on the floor, we mixed it up hard, and we believed in our positions. We were passionate about it, but we liked each other afterwards, and I don't see that as much. Maybe there's a reach out, and because I'm not there, I don't see it. But I'll tell you, there's tremendous animosity against the R's and the D's, and it's almost split. We're almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah. And Tommy wanted all the votes.
Yes.
And so the idea that I hear now emanating is that Madison, Milwaukee, cities don't matter, therefore the Democrats. And I've heard Voss say this, sometimes. Well, that creates a partisanship all by itself because you don't feel you have to go to Milwaukee or go to Madison. I mean, my God, the Republican vote in Madison is down to, 9% or something like that. And when you run, I'm sure you were in the 40s.
I carried Dane County once.
Yeah, you did.
Not against me, but once.
No, I didn't. Against Chuck.
Chuck. Okay, never mind. Just
Former
never
Senator
mind.
earlier,
I
Chuck
won
Ball,
Elroy when we ran
1994.
against each other.
You won.
I didn't.
Maybe okay, let's not deal in fake news, to use a term.
But you asked about social
media?
Social media. I think it's, I'm not sure it's the right thing, but it's here. You got to deal with it, and it's not going away. It's good. It's become more powerful. What bothers me is that the news. I still like to read a newspaper and still read 3 or 4 a day, and I like to read the newspaper. Nobody does that anymore. It's all online, and
well, that brings up a good point. We cared about newspaper endorsements.
Yeah. Yes, we did, and nobody cares.
Nobody cares now. The Milwaukee Journal or whatever they call it now.
They don't endorse it.
They don't endorse.
Yeah.
I mean, think about one of the guideposts in Supreme Court elections were endorsements, because the knowledge at the time of the candidates was quite low.
Well, you mentioned Supreme Court. Are you sad that it's become, it's no longer nonpartisan and it's a DNR elections now? Because that's an evolution that you've seen.
Well, and it's my fault. In our first session, we took out of the Constitution the mandatory retirement age for the Supreme Court. It was 70. You voted against it.
I was right.
You were right. And however, the change in the Constitution said the legislature now will put a new date for mandatory retirement by statute.
Right.
We never got back to that. That was one of the safeguards that the founders put in. Endorsement of newspapers gone. Citizens United is there. The governor can appoint a replacement. No Senate confirmation. Right. Nothing.
So is it bad that our Supreme Court races have become
yes.
almost as
yes,
Governor?
I think it's become way too partisan. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's not going to change it, but
understand.
I don't think.
Does Governor Evers need to become tougher to get his way with the legislature? His reputation has been pretty low profile. Is Tony too nice?
Tony too nice. There's a moniker. I don't think he should change, because you can't have the image that brought you to the governor's office and then all of a sudden change. Okay. I mean, Governor Thompson was the same in office as he had been when he was in the Assembly. When it gets down to negotiating the budget, I think he can be behind the scenes quite tough.
Okay. Your thoughts?
I think I haven't seen everybody says he's really soft. I haven't witnessed that. I think he's come out with some pretty tough liberal policies, and Tom says he had one chance. He's got to set his agenda, and he's done that. But I think what he's got to do is, there's got to be communication. There's got to be more communication, and that's what's going to accomplish a great deal. And after the first budget, we had our go-around on the vetoes, but every budget after that, it was pretty much negotiated out. And out of the 14, 15 years that I was governor, the Democrats were in control of one or both houses 12 of those years. Mm.
And a lot was accomplished in that divided Congress. Yeah.
Has Governor Evers called you about your offer to work on the Racine prison? And
no, he has not.
Do you wish he'd call him?
Yeah, sure.
You're making an appeal right now. Okay.
I'm not making an appeal. What you asked, yeah, I'm not going to appeal. That's up to the
I
governor.
I used the wrong term. You would take the governor's call if he called you.
Of course I would.
I
would take Tom Loftus. I would take yours.
I appreciate that. We're almost out of time. I want you two guys right now to come up with a compromise on highway funding. Ready? Go. Gas tax increase? Come on. Registration fee increase? Index?
There's got to be more money.
Mm. Okay, come from where? Make him an offer.
I would do all of those.
How much of a gas tax increase?
No, I would do all of those in a combination that I could get passed.
You got to get a pass.
I'm not religious about which one, I'll tell you.
And
I'm a deal maker.
make a deal with him right now.
Oh, this would be too easy. He would be
this
every
guy-
time I
In 30
propose.
seconds, we could make a deal. But
Yeah.
the truth of the matter,
Why don't you?
Tom is right. It's got to be negotiated. If Tom and I says something, that'll be used against the positions, and they have to come to that decision themselves, and they've got to go and then convince Governor Evers. If it comes from the Republicans, Governor Evers got to convince them. 8 cents is going to be way too much. The people are.
5.
No, that is not for
Why
you
don't-
or you or I to decide. We haven't
there-
been elected.
But there's
We're
been
here to tell you.
there's been an impasse in the Capitol for 6 years.
Yes.
So maybe if you guys come up with a compromise, maybe they'd listen to their tribal elders. No, you don't want to do a deal here.
I mean, the way I would have worked if it had been the two of us is I would have came up with a package, gone to the governor, and he would have said something. Well, if you got the guts to pass this, I've got the guts to sign it, and then you have a package. But they've got good variables to work with. They've got gas tax, registration fee, toll roads.
All of them.
All of it.
Nothing should be off the table, and they should be there and find out. First, they got to find out how they're going to get through the legislature.
Yep.
They got to have votes in the Assembly and the Senate.
Yep.
Then they got to sell it to the governor, and the governor's got his package out there, and that package is going nowhere. So he's got to. So they got to come up with
Although
a.
there's more interest in the Assembly in raising the gas tax.
Yes,
than-
there is.
than
There is.
At the moment, there is in the
But
Senate.
there's not 8 cents.
That's true. But
There's
maybe,
8 cents.
maybe 5 or something.
There is a point that there's a deal to be made. The roads need money, and the roads have got to be improved, and there's a tremendous opportunity for a good negotiated settlement.
Okay. Just 2 more questions because we're almost out of time. Tom, has Governor Evers had trouble evolving from being a DPI to the leader of the Wisconsin Democratic Party? He doesn't project that he comes to that naturally. Has he? Is he?
I think
made progress.
Oh yes, I think that his travels around the state with Lieutenant Governor is a big change, and I think the two of them have staked out a claim to be the leaders. I think that he is. I served on the Board of Regents with him. I mean, what you see is what you get. He's mild-mannered. He knows the issues. He usually let me do the talking, and then I think he's going to be fine. But I'm very impressed with this idea the lieutenant governor is part of his team. Now, there's reasons for that, of course.
Yes.
But it's a good turn of events.
Okay. Maybe the last question. Advice you'd give Governor Voss, Assembly Speaker Voss, Senate Majority Leader Fitzgerald in terms of this budget. I'll flip a coin. Governor, you're going to go first.
I would tell them to set their parameters and first find out how far they can go in their respective houses, and then sit down with the governor and start negotiations.
If I was the speaker, I'd walk right down to the governor's office and walk in and say, let's have a chat. You know, Tommy and I had such a long relationship. We went to Israel together in 1988. We did all kinds of things. I mean, it was. If you read his book, you'll see the family atmosphere in the Republican Party at that time, especially the Assembly Republicans, and we knew way too much about each other. No, but we knew what made the other person tick. Right. So I don't think the speaker knows what makes Governor Evers tick, or vice versa. They're just going to have to get along.
Wow, wisdom in this conversation. I was going to ask about President Trump, and we'll save that for a different conversation. Former Governor Tommy Thompson, thank you so much.
It's always
Former
a pleasure.
Speaker,
It's always a
Tom
pleasure to be
Loftus,
with
thank
you
you
and
so
Tom
much
Loftus.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with the governor.
Really appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.